Well, hey there, church. I'm so glad to be able to meet with you here again. We're in the middle of this series called Bless, where together we're really looking at how we can love people in very practical ways. And remember, Bless is not a formula, but it's a simple lifestyle that allows us to tap into our primary identity and purpose as followers of Jesus. You know, instead of helping find and follow Jesus, so many times we find ourselves hoping people find and follow Jesus, right? But as we learned last week, hope is really not a strategy. So we've been identifying what it looks like to bless someone. Remember the word bless as an acronym. So the letter B is we begin with prayer. Then L, we listen to them, even asking questions. It's such an incredible display of love these days. Then we even eat with somebody or take them out for a cup of coffee or invite somebody over, have a cookout or a picnic, or even just go out to eat at a restaurant. So today we're going to discover together how we can actually serve somebody. You know, the idea of serving others isn't always easy, is it? I mean, sometimes it literally complicates our lives. Sometimes it's really rewarding, though. But as uncomfortable as this may seem at times, someone has done this for us. And honestly, when somebody serves us, it usually changes our lives. And if it doesn't change our lives, it at least becomes this unforgettable story that we tell people over and over in life. I had somebody serve our family about a year ago. It was my daughter Jillian was traveling back from college in Virginia back home. And while she was on the highway, she encountered two flat tires midway through her 600-mile trip. She'd been following behind a tractor trailer. She didn't see the huge potholes that lied ahead. And boom, she hit those. And I received her phone call while I was at work. A matter of fact, she was remarkably poised for what had happened. And she was safe, thank God, because she was able to exit off the highway. But she was so far from home. And I was so concerned as her dad. And so my first thought was, I got to just jump into my car and drive to her. Even though it's hundreds and hundreds of miles away, didn't matter. I had to get there. But I also knew at the same time that would be faster and she'd have more help faster if I were just to call for help and have somebody come and fix the car. Now, thank God she was with a friend, so that helped a little bit. And it made me feel a lot better. But I still wanted to get in that car and drive. Anyhow, there was this employee of the Tire and Auto Center that I ended up calling, and his name was Walt. And honestly, guys, I'll never forget Walt. Walt went and he drove to pick up my daughter. He brought her back to the shop, saved her a $40 Uber ride. The team fixed her car quickly. They got those two tires replaced. She safely drove home the rest of the trip. And I remember just talking to Walt throughout the couple of hours. I would call in and check in. But finally, when everything was all said and done, I called to personally thank Walt for his care and his concern that he had for my daughter. And here's what he told me, and I love this. He said, you know, if I was a dad and my daughter was far from home, I'd want someone to do the same for me. You know, I'll never forget Walt because of his goodness and because of the fact that he served our family so well that year ago. You know, we've had people help us, and it's made an impact on all of us. Maybe you have your own story. But here's the thing. We can help somebody else, and it could become a story for them. You know, Jesus took the idea during his time here on this earth of that whole idea of the more power you have, the better off you are. And he turned it upside down to the more stuff or wealth I have, the bigger difference I can make in somebody else's life. You know, Jesus did something that was just radical back in his day. He put his crown down and he took up a towel. Now, I want you to, we've all heard this story of Jesus, the Last Supper, Jesus washing the feet of the disciples. But I want you to really listen to it this time like you've never heard it before. Just try to just take it in like this is the first time you've heard this. John records it in John 13. He says, before the Passover celebration, Jesus knew that his hour had come to leave this world and return to his Father. He'd loved his disciples during his ministry on earth, And now he loved them to the very end. I love that. He had so much going on in his life, and his concern was for them. Well, it was time for supper, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, and that he had come from God, and that he would return to God. Jesus knew his mission. So he got up from the table, he took off his robe, he wrapped a towel around his waist, and he poured water into a basin. And then he began to wash the disciples' filthy feet. I'll just call them filthy. He dried them with a towel that he had around him. It's an amazing scene. I mean, this scene was so strange and it was so jarring to the disciples. And I think it was really uncomfortable for them at some level as well, because this was a total upside down power paradigm. Jesus was the rabbi. Jesus was the one in charge. Jesus was the leader. The disciples were the followers. And just to give you context of that culture that they were living in, when somebody would enter into a home, somebody who was of lowly estate, the lowest on the totem pole, would be there to humbly wash their dirty feet. That was just a way that they would keep the homes clean and keep the hygiene going as well. But people weren't in charge of washing their own feet. There would always be someone low on the totem pole who would wash the feet of everyone who showed up. Remember also that people ate really low to the ground, reclined as well, so those feet were close to everyone. So it was important to wash your feet. You know, we wash our hands today. Back then, you would wash your hands, but you'd also wash your feet. I can't only imagine what it felt like for those disciples, even before that moment when Jesus stood up, when they all came into that upper room together, and they're all looking around saying, you know, there's nobody here to wash our feet. Who's going to do the foot, wash the feet? Who's going to do it? And it reminds you ever been in a class and a teacher's asking these questions and everyone's avoiding eye contact? Nobody wants to, they don't know the answer. They don't want to answer the answer. They're nervous about it. I can only imagine if this was the scene here. Nobody's going to offer to grab a towel and to wash other people's feet. Some of these guys honestly didn't even like each other. You know, here they are following Jesus, and they came from such different backgrounds culturally that they didn't always see eye to eye with each other. So Jesus he sees the situation, he feels the tension in the air, and he goes ahead and he does this. He stands up and he wraps a towel around his waist and he washes every disciple's feet. Now, you got to remember that this was a culture of honor and of shame. So it was really jarring to see this. This wasn't just servanthood on Jesus' part, but this was him being shamed in that moment. That's what it felt like for these guys. And I think today, our lives they go by so fast, and we live in such a consumer-oriented society that serving others is really a wholesale paradigm shift. I want to explain to you maybe what a paradigm shift is. Here's an example of one that people use frequently. It took place way back in around 500 years ago, AD 1500. The world at the time, the civilized world at the time, truly believed that the whole universe, not just our solar system, but the whole universe revolved around the Earth. They just saw this. The sun would come up and go down, so they just figured all this stuff revolved around the Earth. Matter of fact, I believe it was Ptolemy who came up with this concept and this idea. They called it the Ptolemaic system. I wonder if Ptolemy was a narcissist, because it seems like narcissists always think everything revolves around them, right? Well, anyhow, Copernicus, another scientist, he comes to the scene and he starts studying the solar system, and he says, wait a minute, I think that we've been looking at something totally different. And he says, I think we need to turn this whole system upside down, where not everything is revolving around the Earth. Rather, at least our solar system is revolving around the sun. Well, this was a totally different paradigm shift. And things did not go well for him initially when he talked about this and got that theory out there, but soon he was proven right. And now today we all understand this. Of course it is. We take trips around the sun and they equivalent to a year. We know all that. But 500 years ago, huge paradigm shift. Well, serving others, I think, is such a huge paradigm shift in our society. We're so used to being served ourselves, especially through organizations and customer service, that's even called, right? I don't think all the time that it's our first intent to serve others, is it? But here we have Jesus. He's exchanging his crown for a towel. He's humbling himself. He's teaching a huge lesson. As a matter of fact, while he was doing this, going around from disciple to disciple, washing their feet, John records a conversation between he and Peter. It says, when Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You don't understand now what I'm doing, but someday you will." "No," Peter protested. "You're never going to wash my feet. You're not going to do that. That's not your position to do that. You're not going to be this lowly person, this lowly slave in this room." And Jesus said, "No, I want you to see this. I want you to experience this. I want you to remember this." I mean, can you imagine how hard this is and so weird this is for these disciples? It's kind of like if you invited your boss to your home for dinner. And imagine your boss at your house and they just start taking the garbage out at your house. They go around your house and they just start, "Oh, I'll take this garbage out, these messy diapers, all this stuff." And you, of course, if you saw that, you would go, "No, no, 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 don't you dare do that. We'll take care of this," or you get one of your kids to do it or something. You wouldn't have your boss do that. But this is what Jesus did. And these guys, obviously, in the moment, they don't know the whole story. I mean, they're a little in the dark here. They just know that they're having dinner together with Jesus. They don't know what's coming next. They don't know the crucifixion and the resurrection are just hours and days away. But Jesus is trying to help them understand something that is such a high value in God's kingdom. He wants this imprinted on them. He wants them to remember this moment. He wants them to know and understand that servanthood, serving others, is a kingdom value and it makes an impact in people's lives. The business world has recently come to understand this and they call it servant leadership. But Jesus, he just call it leadership. That's what it is. Matter of fact, before all this, Jesus is teaching his disciples. Matthew records this in Matthew 20. It says, "But Jesus called them together and he said, you know that the rulers in this world, they lord it over their people. They take advantage of their position and all of that. The officials flaunt their authority over those under them." They're like, "Yeah, we get it. We see it all the time." He said this, "Among you, it's going to be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant." Now, these disciples, as I said, they didn't know that tomorrow Jesus is going to be arrested. They didn't know that he was going to be beaten and stripped, humiliated, naked, bleeding, and dying. Our Savior and King was going to hang on a cross in the most horrible way. And Jesus is trying to teach them that we, as his followers, not only him, we exchange our crowns for a towel. This is how we love each other the way that Jesus has loved us. John records still some more. He says, after washing their feet, he put on his robe again, he sat down, and then he asked, he's trying to drill down here, "Do you understand what I was doing? You called me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. You ought to serve other people as well. I've given you an example to follow. Do not just as I've taught." I love this. "Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth, slaves are not greater than their masters, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message." In other words, if I can do this, you can do this. Now that you know these things, look at this. God will bless you for doing them. This is a mic drop moment here. I've done this for you. Now you do this for each other. It's not about hierarchy. It's not about pecking order. It's about your blessing people by serving others. You know, serving others was never meant for Jesus to stop at that table, right? It was never meant to just stay in that room for them. It was meant to continue on throughout history. And you think about that through Christianity, through the history of the church. It was Christian after Christian, follower of Jesus after follower of Jesus, serving one another. During the plagues, Christians would run to the sick, and they would even die themselves taking care of them. And throughout the times when children were really not thought of much at all, forgotten children would be found by Christians, and they would be cared for individually, and some would be adopted into families as well. All throughout the history of the church, Jesus follower after Jesus follower did for one what they wished they could do for all. You know, we live in a world today where there is so much fear and so much dread. You know, many of us, our attention is trained toward Ukraine right now, is it not? We see one country invading another, and we've got this front row seat to atrocity after atrocity. And we wonder, you know, what can be done about this? How is this thing even going to end? What's it going to look like? Those of us that were raised with the threat of nuclear war, we're becoming reacquainted with those fears again as well, right? And those questions arise. Where is God in all of this? And then we see families meeting refugee families in train stations. And they say to these families, come home with us. We see moms leaving strollers for other moms to be able to place their babies in and transport them. And it's in those moments where we see God. God's found in those acts of service, in those acts of kindness. He works through each person as they open up their homes for others. He works through you and I as we serve each other. You know, the problems of this world that we see, they really can be paralyzing. They can fill us with fear. We can feel like there's not enough that can be done. But here's the truth. God is in those moments of serving, and we can all do for one what we wish we could do for all as we serve people in our lives like Jesus would. Now, what does that look like? Well, for some of us, you know, we are actually partnering with a center down in Romania that's helping refugees. Maybe it's for some of us, it's giving. But what does that mean about us right here in America, you know, in our neighborhoods? What does doing for one what we wish we could do for all look like? Oh, I would imagine it probably starts with just praying for somebody, for listening to them and asking questions, and maybe even taking them out for a cup of coffee. And maybe by then you kind of know a need that would be a great way to serve them. And I love what Jesus said back with his commission. We talked about this a couple of weeks. Go and make disciples. He's saying, as you are going, make disciples. So, as you're going, consider small, simple ways that you can be a blessing. And if we're going to live on mission, as we're called to do, we can lean into our primary identity and purpose. Do for that one person what you wish you could do for so many others. Kind of takes the paralysis away, takes the overwhelmingness away, but more than anything, you yourself are being the hands and feet of Jesus in that moment, in that person's life. You know, when we do this, we're exchanging a crown for a towel. So the question that I want to ask you is, where could you serve? What could you do? Maybe it's something as simple as rolling a garbage can out for your neighbor who's maybe going through some difficult medical issues right now, or asking how that they are doing. Just check in on them. Maybe it's just being purposeful to encourage people. You know, encouragement is like oxygen to our soul anymore today. Maybe it's letting somebody cut in front of you in line. Oh, I know, that's drastic, right? That's the towel life. Maybe it's some spring cleaning for somebody in your neighborhood, somebody you know who needs a little bit of help. It's that time of year now. You can start planning for that. Maybe it's serving someone in your extended family or your friend group. You know, sometimes we're so blind to those that are closest to us, aren't we? So what if we all just moved from hoping people find and follow Jesus to helping people find and follow Jesus? You know, these disciples, after this moment, they were never the same after that. And then Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection took place, and that definitely left an indelible impression on them. Matter of fact, so much so that they introduced themselves. You'll see it all throughout the New Testament letters. They introduced themselves as servants and slaves of Jesus. You think that towel made an impression? And here's what they did. They turned the world upside down. So, it doesn't have to be huge things. A lot of times it's just in the little things. But let's serve. Let's care for. And let's love those who God has placed in our lives. And who knows? It might just change our world. And if not, it may change the persons that we serve. And that's a start, right? Hey, let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, God, we want to thank you so much for the act of love that you show us every day. Forgive us for those moments, God, that we run past them and don't even recognize those in our lives. God, we want to be a people who see your work all the time and see you at work. And that way, when we recognize your blessings to us, it's easier for us to be a blessing to others. God, I pray that you'd help each one of us who are paralyzed these days by fear and despair, by what we're seeing on the news, by situations that are over our head that are bigger than our influence, God. And Lord, I pray that you would show us, if you haven't already, how that we can literally show others Jesus by being your hands and feet. God, help us to be able to identify what we could do for one, what we wish we could do for all. And God, I pray that we'd see your work accomplished and done and lives changed because of it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. God bless you.